joy to Chiclayo, Peru, to the halls of the Vatican. A new book takes us inside the secretive conclave where Chicago's own Robert Prevost became Pope Leo XIV. And joining us is the book's author, National Catholic reporter journalist Christopher White, who got this book together in just about a month and a half. Congratulations. It's a fascinating read. You describe this hornet's nest that the College of Cardinals walked into after Francis died, and that Pope Leo is now in charge of. Describe the hornet's nest for us.
Well, I think after 12 years of Pope Francis's papacy, which I think if you love Pope Francis, if you hated Pope Francis, you certainly have to recognize the fact that he initiated a major era of change in the Catholic Church. He wanted the Church to become more welcoming, more participatory. And when he died, the Cardinals had to decide, do we want to continue on this path? And in electing Cardinal Prevost, I think it was certainly clear that they signaled they wanted someone who shared Pope Francis's priorities, but was perhaps a different style of leader. Cardinal Prevost, now Leo XIV, is an introvert. He's a cautious man. Francis was a great extrovert, so they have different styles.
And Francis made a big, I don't want to say show, but he made a big deal of being with the people, not having all the trappings. We'll see how Prevost handles that. But you met him for the first time in 2023 when he was working in the Vatican. Tell us what that encounter was like.
Sure. So Pope Francis brought him to Rome from Peru, where he had been serving as a bishop, to head what was really, I think, one of the Vatican's most important and powerful offices, the office responsible for vetting and identifying potential Catholic bishops around the world. He arrived, he's all of a sudden the most important American in Rome. So I reached out, and he didn't want to do an interview because it's a very sensitive office, but he invited me in to meet with him. And so the first time I met him, we spent about an hour together, and he had tons of questions for me. I was there, of course, to learn about him and his priorities and what he was thinking of doing with the office. But he interrogated me a bit about what I thought of the United States Church, why there was such a hub of resistance to Pope Francis. So he struck me then, that first encounter, and this certainly played out of the time that I got to know him, as someone who really does his homework.
And it seems like he's viewed, even though he's born in Chicago from the United States, he's viewed more as a Latin American, South American figure, as evidenced by him asking you questions about the Church in the United States. But he did grow up in Dalton. How did Chicago shape who he is and his philosophy?
Well, I think, he has a very common American, all Chicago story. He's got this sort of family with all this multi-ethnic background. And I think from an early age, his horizons were set beyond just Chicago, but rooted here. And I think that sort of is key to understanding him. He's a person who's rooted, but with a global vision. And you can trace that back to his backyard here in Dalton.
And he spent many years in Peru, and in fact, that was sort of what shaped him as a pastor, was it not?
Yeah, he always said that Peru was where he became a pastor, and I think this was important to his election. He was from the United States, but he had a bridge to Latin America, a bridge to Europe, because he studied in Europe, and then later was the head of his religious order living in Europe. And so a lot of the College of Cardinals sort of saw him as this global missionary, not so much as your caricature American that perhaps would have put off some people for voting for an American.
So maybe it made him a little more palatable, because
I think so.
Conventional wisdom was they'll never elect an American pope, but here we are. Take us inside the Vatican and the conclave. When that door closes, what happens between that period and the time you see the white smoke?
Yeah, it's the most secretive election process on earth. They don't have access to television. Their phones have been confiscated. Those of us on the outside aren't able to talk to them, so we don't really know what's happening. Look, the voting process itself is quite formal. They have to cast their ballots. They, swear before God that they're casting a vote for the person that they think is most qualified to be Pope. And then when they leave the Sistine Chapel for their lunch times, their dinner times, they have some sidebar conversations, and that's where the real work of the conclave happens. There are no speeches inside the Sistine Chapel, but in the Vatican, in the house where they're all sort of boarded up for however long it takes, that's when they're jockeying and they're talking about, could this guy do the job? What do you know about him? Who are you prioritizing?
Kind of sounds like a Cook County slating process. So how did Prevost make it from round to round to round and then emerge as the person with the majority? And then what was that moment like when he found out?
Yeah, so, he was elected on the 4th ballot, which I think surprised people that the white smoke appeared so soon, because this was a big conclave with, 133 people. Most of them didn't know each other. So some people thought, oh, this is going to go on for a long period of time. Really, in that second ballot that they cast on that, that Thursday morning, his numbers begin to tick up right away. And then it was pretty much decisive after that. You know, it requires a 2/3 majority. And in the second to last round of voting, he was actually the one that had been elected to read out the names. So he would have been reading his name, Prevost, 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 over and over again. So it's kind of exciting to think about, oh, just what daunting responsibility that is. You're reading the names aloud and realizing you might become Pope.
Probably a wave of panic perhaps setting in. And there's a scene in your book where once he finds out his head is in his hands, or once he knows he's going to emerge, I mean, he's just like, oh my God.
Yes, the cardinal seated next to him, you know, just saw him with his head in his hands, and he asked him, you know, would you like some candy? He had snuck some candy into the Sistine Chapel, and he said yes.
And what, you know, you talked about this division in the church between progressives who want to be more in the mold of Pope Francis and conservatives. From what you know about Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, what do you believe in terms of the direction that he'll go?
I think he shares all of Pope Francis's instincts. I think he believes that the Catholic Church has to provide a better way of letting people have a seat at the table. He's a real listener. Now, I don't know what that means in terms of how he's going to lead the church on some of the hot-button issues, such as women, LGBTQ issues, but I think he's been very clear that the church has to do a better job at letting voices be heard so they have a say. I've talked to a lot of women that worked with him, and they all attest to the fact that they felt that he's someone that believes that women need to have a greater role in the church.
All right, Christopher White, fascinating book, Pope Leo XIV. And congratulations, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
And finally tonight, we want this show to be a two-way conversation. We've been getting some good emails, so please keep them coming. Send us your thoughts. Do you like what you see? Don't like what you see? Is there an issue or story you think we need to cover? Just let us know. Email us at parisonpolitics@fox.com. Or you can always find me on X, formerly Twitter, as @PA Schutz. And now you can also listen to the show anywhere you stream podcasts. New episodes drop Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And as always, keep up with all the news you need to know at fox32chicago.com and with the Fox local app. We are back next Monday, so have a wonderful weekend. Stay dry, stay cool, and we'll see you next time.